I just used your card for snacks, my sister's kid said. By morning, $6,300 was gone. Mom dismissed it. Kids will be kids. I said nothing. That night, I quietly froze every card tied to their accounts. At 6 a.m., my sister opened her banking app and screamed, and 10 minutes later I got a call from. I barely managed to keep my emotions in check when I saw it. $6,300. Gone. Almost all the money I had left. And spent on absolute nonsense. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just stared at my laptop screen feeling like my chest was being crushed. That money was supposed to last me through the month. I was already stretching things thin trying to support 5 people on one paycheck. Myself, my daughter, and my sister's entire family. I scrolled through the list of charges. Louis Vuitton. Zara. A pair of sneakers that cost more than my rent back when I was in college. High-end hair tools, niche skincare brands, and even a wellness retreat deposit that made me physically laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. My niece, 18, unemployed, had used my saved card details to go on a luxury shopping spree. She had no money of her own. He never had. And it wasn't an accident. I know that because of what she said earlier that evening. I got home a little after 8 p.m. Long day, back-to-back meetings at work. I was tired, hungry, and still had emails to answer. She was curled up on the couch in leggings and a hoodie, scrolling on her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. I asked her how her day was. She said, casually, that she used my card for some snacks and a few other things because it was saved in the Amazon account. I stopped walking. Asked her what she meant. She just shrugged. Said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. I just used your card for snacks, she said. It's not a big deal. I didn't argue. I didn't even say anything. I just went to my room and opened my laptop. The moment I saw the balance, I felt like I couldn't breathe. That card wasn't even for them. I'd been using it for emergencies. And slowly, because of them, those emergencies had become every week. Groceries, school supplies for my kid, gas for their car, the little things that added up. But this was a full-on attack on my life savings. And she said it like she borrowed a hairbrush. They had been living with me for 6 months. It was only supposed to be 2 weeks. My sister said they just needed to figure things out. Her husband had been laid off. She hadn't worked in years. Rent was too high. Their credit was trashed. I believed them. I let them move in. I fed them, paid for them, even let my daughter move into my room so their daughter could have her own space. Every week there was some new excuse, some reason they couldn't contribute. And every week I told myself it was temporary. But it wasn't temporary. It was comfortable, for them. At around midnight I knocked on their door. My sister opened it with this sleepy, annoyed face. I told her what happened. That her daughter had spent over $6,000. She blinked like it didn't even register. Then she said it. Kids will be kids. That was the moment something snapped in me. Not loudly, quietly, deeply. I said nothing else. I walked back to my room, closed the door, and sat there in silence. At 1:17 a.m. I began freezing every single card they had ever used or had access to. Every sub-account. Every auto-login. I even contacted a few retailers to reverse or cancel pending purchases. One of them had already shipped, but I knew the return window was 14 days. I had time. By 6 a.m. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard a scream. Not a yell. A scream. It came from the guest room. 10 minutes later my phone rang. My sister's husband. His voice was immediately aggressive. He was demanding to know why their cards weren't working, why their apps were locked, why the Uber Eats orders weren't going through. I listened to the full rant without saying a word. Then I hung up. I didn't feel sorry. I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. Because this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was what happens when you teach people that your boundaries are optional. They crossed the line. And they weren't going to like what came next. By the time the sun was fully up, the house had gone from quiet tension to full-blown chaos. My sister stormed through the hallway like a woman betrayed, slamming cabinets and asking loud rhetorical questions like, how could Abigail do this to us? Her husband was outside on the porch chain vaping and on speakerphone with someone, talking about how I humiliated his family. Meanwhile, the daughter, the one who wiped my account clean, sat in the living room clutching her phone like it was a life raft, crying over the handbags and essential items that were suddenly being refunded or marked return initiated. And in the middle of all that, I was just sitting at the kitchen table, drinking my coffee like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to earth. None of them had the guts to confront me right away. My sister passed by me a few times waiting for me to speak first. I didn't. I wanted them to feel the silence. I wanted them to sit in the wreckage and think about the fact that it was them who caused it, not me. Around noon, my sister finally broke the standoff. She came into the kitchen and said we needed to have a grown-up conversation as a family. I agreed only because part of me still held on to the insane idea that maybe, just maybe, they'd realize how far they'd gone. We sat down in the living room. Me on one side, them on the other like it was a negotiation table. My sister started with, "We feel like your reaction was a bit extreme." Then came the usual. That I embarrassed them. That I created instability. That I should have just talked to them first before cutting off access to the accounts. As if the $6,300 vanishing without a single heads up from them was perfectly reasonable. Her husband jumped in next, saying I made them feel unwelcome and helpless. He actually said I damaged the trust between us. Then my niece, the one who spent my money like she had a brand deal with Gucci, said she was under a lot of pressure, and that at her age stability was essential for her growth. She said the shopping made her feel like she was in control of something even just for a moment. I just sat there listening, wondering if they'd all collectively lost their minds. They weren't ashamed. They were angry at me. I told them calmly that I had less than $300 to my name now. That I was behind on 2 utility bills. That I'd given up nearly every comfort I had so they wouldn't have to sleep in their car. That I hadn't had a proper weekend off in over 4 months because of extra shifts. That my own daughter had to give up her room, her routines, and her peace for people who couldn't even say thank you. And now they were talking to me about stability? I said I didn't want the money back. I meant it. Not because I was forgiving them, but because I was done. Done expecting responsibility from people who lived like the world owed them something. Done making excuses for grown adults who thought kindness was a weakness. My sister started to cry. Her husband looked down. My niece didn't say anything, just got up and walked to her room. The next morning I left the house early. Got in the car and just drove. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to be away. I grabbed a gas station coffee and parked in a grocery store lot, watching people go in and out like it was any normal day. I sat there for over an hour. When I came back, there was an envelope on the kitchen counter. It had my name on it, written in rushed handwriting. Inside was a note that said, "We're sorry. We'll fix it." No money. No plan. No next steps. Just 7 words on a piece of paper. That's when it really sank in. They weren't going to fix anything. Because in their heads they hadn't broken anything. And that meant I had to be the one to change everything. The envelope on the kitchen counter sat there for 2 full days before I even touched it again. I read the note once and left it there. "We're sorry. We'll fix it." That's all it said. No explanation. No money. No plan. Just a vague promise, like that was supposed to patch over the fact that they had drained my account and still hadn't done a damn thing to make it right. They tiptoed around me for a while after that. I think they believed they were being considerate. Quiet in the mornings, dishes done, shoes off at the door. But all of it felt hollow. Like they were just waiting for my mood to pass. Like they'd ridden out storms before and this would be no different. But this time was different. I was watching them now, really watching. My niece was still waking up past 10 every day, sitting cross-legged on the couch, scrolling non-stop and shopping online with whatever money she had left from God knows where. Still no job. Still no effort. She asked me one afternoon if I'd help her rebuild her Amazon cart, because everything got refunded. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. My sister was trying harder to act productive. She mentioned sending out a few applications but couldn't remember where. Said she was looking into remote opportunities, but spent most of her time rewatching old shows on her laptop. Her husband, meanwhile, spent the majority of his time in the garage, hiding behind the excuse of job hunting, while vaping and watching YouTube videos. It was surreal. Like I was living in a simulation where nobody could see the wreckage except me. So one night after work, I stayed up late at the dining table and made a plan. I printed out job listings from 3 local websites. Entry-level stuff, nothing fancy, just a way to get their feet in the door and start making money again. I sorted them by skill level, made little notes about which ones might be a good match for each of them. I even wrote down the bus routes for the ones they could get to without needing my car. The next day I called a house meeting. Told them I had something to share and asked for 15 minutes of their time. They sat down looking more annoyed than curious. I started by saying I wasn't looking to punish anyone. That I knew things had been hard and I understood the pressure they were under. But that I couldn't carry 5 people on one salary anymore. I said I'd printed out job opportunities for each of them, things they could apply for this week. That if they took action now we could move forward. Together. My sister didn't say much. He kept nodding but not really looking at me. Her husband leaned back on the couch and said he appreciated the effort but that it's not that simple. That there were other factors I wasn't considering. I asked him what those were. He didn't answer. Then came the worst part. My niece rolled her eyes, picked up the job listings, glanced at the paper like it was a joke, then stood up and dropped them in the trash. She said, "I'm not going to work at some fast food place like I'm 16. I'm not desperate." I looked at her, then at my sister. Nothing. They just let it happen. No one corrected her. No one apologized. No one pulled her aside later. It was just normal to them. I went to bed without saying another word. But that night, lying in the dark, I realized that the person I'd become over the last 6 months, the one who kept giving, sacrificing, stretching herself thin, she had to disappear. Because they weren't just taking money anymore. They were taking pieces of me. And I had one final move left. That night I barely slept. I was too aware of how everything in that house had turned upside down. It wasn't just money anymore. It was the disrespect, the entitlement, the way they looked at me like I was in their way for trying to help them stand on their own 2 feet. I kept thinking about my niece's words. I'm not desperate. After dumping the job listings into the trash like they were a menu she didn't like. By morning, I knew what I had to do. First thing, I called into work and took a personal day. Then I started gathering receipts. Return windows were closing and I wasn't going to let that money slip away. Most of the big-ticket items my niece ordered hadn't even been opened yet. Still in their boxes, sitting in the corner of her room like trophies. I didn't ask for permission. I just packed them into the trunk of my car. She didn't even notice. She was in the backyard on FaceTime laughing about something with a friend. I heard her say the words, "She's still mad about the card thing," and then laugh like I was some uptight idiot who couldn't take a joke. I drove straight to the high-end boutique downtown and returned the handbag first. They asked if I was the original purchaser. I said yes. No questions. Refund processed. $1,199 back to my account. Then Sephora, the Nike store, and a small online boutique with a physical location across the city. I spent 5 hours driving around, returning every last thing I could. By the end of the day, I'd recovered nearly $4,500. I came home exhausted but calmer than I'd felt in weeks. I was in the kitchen pouring a glass of water when my niece finally noticed. She came flying into the room demanding to know where her stuff was. I told her flat out I returned it, that it was never hers to begin with. She started screaming. Not just yelling, screaming. Called me a thief, called me jealous, said I was ruining her life. And then she did something I never expected. She picked up my coffee mug and threw it at the wall. The crash was so loud my daughter came running out of her room. My sister came in seconds later, asking what the hell was going on. My niece pointed at me and shouted that I'd stolen from her, that I'd violated her privacy, and that she was going to call the police. I looked her dead in the face and said, "Go ahead." That shut her up. Then, for the first time since this nightmare started, I turned to my sister and said exactly what I'd been holding back. I told her her daughter had turned into someone I didn't even recognize. That I'd tried everything. Fed them, housed them, protected them, and all I got in return was gaslighting, disrespect, and financial ruin. I said that if she wasn't willing to parent her child, then she'd both failed as a mother and as my sister. Her husband stood there silently in the doorway. He didn't say a word. And I wasn't done. I told them they had 14 days to get out of my house. That was it. No more chances. No more warnings. They were going to figure it out on their own, just like I had for the last 10 years. I said I'd give them the resources if they needed them, but I wasn't going to carry them anymore. My sister started crying again, saying it wasn't fair, that they weren't ready. And that's when I dropped the last piece. I told them I'd called a family friend who runs a restaurant. They had 3 positions open. Host, server. I told them the friend agreed to hire all 3 of them, if they showed up Monday morning. My niece laughed in disbelief. My sister looked horrified. They thought I was joking. I wasn't. None of them answered me that night. But the next morning, the husband, the same man who yelled at me a week ago, walked into the kitchen and asked what time the shift started. He didn't say thank you, but at least he was finally scared enough to move. Monday morning came, and for the first time in months, the house was dead silent at 7 a.m. No one scrolling on their phone, no giggling FaceTime calls, no cereal bowls left out. Just quiet. Then I heard the front door close. I looked out the window and saw my sister's husband getting into their car. He was actually going. No fanfare. No speeches. Just gone. An hour later, my sister shuffled into the kitchen. She poured a cup of coffee and mumbled something about giving the job a shot. I nodded. I didn't say I was surprised. I didn't tell her that the friend had already called me earlier and said if they didn't show up, the offer was off for good. At noon, my niece finally emerged. She didn't speak, didn't look at me, just stood by the counter and waited for the microwave to beep. Then she asked quietly if the rest of her orders were being returned too. I told her there were a few more things we hadn't gotten to yet. A pair of sunglasses, a luxury face serum, and a Bluetooth speaker. The return window was still open, and yes, we were returning those too. She muttered that it was humiliating. I agreed. We went to the mall together. Not because I thought it would be some bonding moment, because she was legally an adult and some of the returns required ID verification. I let her handle it. I watched her face when the cashier asked, "Do you have the original payment method?" And she had to say, "It was my aunt's card." One by one, the items disappeared. Refunds processed. Almost $6,000 recovered by the time we were done. It wasn't all of it. Some of the purchases were final sale, but it was enough. I told her to keep the receipts. I wasn't covering for her if anything came back on my statement later. Back in the car, she sat with her arms crossed, fuming. She said I didn't understand what it was like to feel like you had nothing. That shopping gave her control, a break from stress. I didn't argue, but I asked her what she thought my life looked like. She thought I got here by shopping my way out of stress. If she realized I hadn't bought myself a new pair of shoes in over a year, because I was too busy paying to keep 5 people afloat. She didn't answer. Just looked out the window. That night, I went into my room, shut the door, and for the first time in months, I let myself feel everything. The exhaustion, the frustration, the deep, crushing disappointment. But also something else, clarity. As I had tried. I gave them everything. Shelter. Food. A second, third, fourth chance. I handed them jobs. I returned the stolen money. I stayed calm when I wanted to scream. I offered them a way out. And they barely took it. Her father came home from his first shift and went straight to bed. My sister followed not long after, saying she didn't think she could handle the pressure. My niece said the restaurant was not her vibe, and that she was going to look for something more aligned with her personality. So I made one final decision. I typed up a letter. It was short. Just a notice that they had 10 days left. That the spare key was being deactivated. That I'd arranged for temporary storage if they needed help moving their things. But after that, done. I left the letter on the kitchen table. In the morning it was still there, untouched. They didn't say a word. 10 days passed. On the morning of the deadline, I woke up at 6 a.m. and found the house quiet. I went downstairs expecting a fight, or at the very least some last-minute guilt trip. But the guest room was empty. Their stuff was gone. The only sign they had ever been there was a half-eaten box of cereal on the counter and a pair of cheap flip-flops by the door. They left without saying goodbye. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't need to know where they were going or what their plan was. I'd done more than enough. For 6 months, I lived their struggle like it was my own, while they walked around like I owed them my stability, my patience, my peace. I sacrificed everything, money, time, even my own daughter's comfort, just to keep them afloat. And the whole time I thought if I gave more they'd change. I was wrong. People don't change because you make life easier for them. They change when they decide to. And they never did. The next few days were the quietest my house had felt in half a year. I cleaned out the guest room. My daughter helped me turn it back into a music room like she used to have. She didn't say much about them leaving, just smiled when I gave her back her old space. I checked my bank account. Just over $6,100. Not everything but close. Enough to start rebuilding. Enough to breathe again. Then 5 days after they left, I got a call from my sister. I let it go to voicemail. She left a long message. Said they were staying with an old friend for now. That her husband was trying to stick with the job. That my niece was processing everything and reevaluating her goals. She ended the message with a sentence that made me pause. We know we messed up, but I hope you won't shut us out forever. I didn't respond, because I am shutting them out. Not out of spite. Not for revenge. But because I finally learned something I should have known a long time ago. I can't keep living my life as the safety net for people who refuse to climb. From now on, my attention goes to the people who respect it. To my daughter. To my home. To myself. No more rescuing people who sink every lifeboat I send. No more holding space for grown adults who use kindness like a credit card. I was good. I was useful. I was the glue. And it broke me. That won't happen again.